Hello, everyone, and welcome to Module 2 of the Body Wisdom Activation. Today is all about learning to listen before the story begins to the very first language that we have, which is sensation. Sensation is the body's first language, and it is the way the root communicates with us. So we know that when we are dropping into the layers of sensation, we are connecting with our foundational energetic level. We are connecting with the root. And this is critical for being able to utilize the energy work we want to do, the spiritual work we want to do, to really connect with the truth, to really know what is actually going on beneath the stories, beneath the patterns, beneath the habits, at the core of our being. So before thought, before emotion, before meaning, there is sensation. Sensation is how the body speaks in real time. So it's through pressure, through temperature, through vibration and tightness and softness and weight and emptiness. So we moved into our presence, right? We talked about bringing as much of our energy as we can into this present moment to be in the awareness of this present moment. And now what do we do with that? So we have all of our energy here. We have our presence here in this real moment, the only moment that exists for real. And through that, we are able to move into sensation as a doorway to the wisdom of the body, to the body's intelligence. And so that is what I mean by listening below the surface. We can get below the surface of our stories, of the limiting beliefs, of the habitual patterns, into the truth of our existence, into the truth of our body, the truth of what's really driving all of those things, driving all of the subconscious behaviors and patterns that play out. And we can begin to get past that and begin to shift the needle on that by coming into the core truth that resides in the awareness of our body in this present moment. And that is why we had to come into our presence first. And we'll keep practicing that, staying in the present, right? That doesn't just go away. We're going to keep practicing that, but we're now layering on how do we utilize that presence to drop into this language from the body, into the depths of the body, into the core of the body, using that presence to do that. So now that we have more access to the body because we're more in this present moment, we are actually experiencing all the way down through the root. We have the ability to do that, right? And we need to move through the layers to get there. And that will also be a layered process, just like presence is. So, but we have the greater ability in the presence of this moment, of this body, to notice the truth of the physical self and to really feel it as a lived reality, getting beyond the mind. So this module begins where truth first arises, in the unfiltered language of sensation. So, like I just said, just like awareness, sensation exists in layers. And you felt this before, even if you haven't named it. So just take a moment to feel into this. When you might notice, right? Your jaw tightening, your breath is more shallow, you have a heaviness in your chest, maybe your legs are restless. And there's a difference between noticing something like this in the body and what we often do is like, oh my God, my neck is so tight today. Ah, it must have been that workout that I did. Oh, I must have slept weird. Oh my gosh, I just always carry the weight of the world on my shoulders. Like and "Oh, I need to stop doing that," or how could I do it differently? Or, like our mind takes off. And, maybe it pulls us out of the present moment. Maybe we're in a present moment, but we're keeping our energy up here in the mind. The verses staying with the sensation without trying to fix or interpret it. And when we don't try to fix or interpret it or make sense of it, then another layer appears. So we can feel then maybe the warmth that's under the pressure. Maybe we can feel a pulsing sensation below the tightness. Maybe we can feel that there's a subtle connection between, oh, yeah, my jaw feels so tense, and so do my hips. And maybe in staying with that, we can find a softening beneath the tension. So, this is where we begin to travel through the layers, building resilience around how long we can stay with what arises and the capacity to grow from presence, not by forcing ourselves there, but by allowing the spaciousness, right? We talked about that in the present moment, but then the capacity that grows to stay with what we're experiencing in that present moment. That's building resilience. So we often talk about resilience. I just want to take a little sidetrack here for a moment as um this ability to make our way through. And really resilience has in that way of thinking has kind of created this idea about resilience that like I can handle more than than maybe I should, right? I can handle more than um I can be like superhuman in situations, right? And I'm resilient because I can like make my way through and despite what maybe my body is screaming at me, right? Like I can keep running even though I'm really thirsty. So, in that way, resilience is actually ignoring the body, but it is a way that we have framed resilience up in our culture, right? If we say somebody is really resilient, we're often talking about it in that way. But I want to begin to frame resilience in a different way, in a way that is actually we are resilient in the way that we are able to stay in our body in the present moment. That's what building true resilience means to me, is that we can be really honest and and have staying power with our with the experience we're having all the way through. So I don't get um, not having resilience would be like, oh, I'm starting to feel sad. Oh my gosh, I need to go on a run. I need to go watch a movie. I need to, like, I don't want to feel that sadness, right? I have no resilience for what my emotional experience is, let alone what beneath that my physical experiences, right? So can I have listening power? Can I have staying power? That's the resilience we're looking for here, because sensation reveals itself in layers. And like we talked about, like the nervous system has to feel safe enough to be noticed, right? And we have to get past the shields of the nervous system to get into the deeper layers of our body. So, this is how we start to tap into the different energetic layers of the body, because each has their own frequency, each has their own tone, their own rhythm, their own information, their own kind of way they move us, assist us in this life we live. So as awareness travels, it guides us to where life is actually happening. And I just want to move through these energetic layers so that we can all be aligned in how we're thinking. I want to talk about how I'm thinking about this so it makes more sense what I'm talking about. So the energetic layers of our being, we have just in broad spectrum, right? The mental energetic layer, emotional energetic layer, thinking below the throat through our heart. And then we have the physical energetic layer, which makes up our belly and below. And so, if we break these down in our mental emotional layer, we have this connection to our third eye, to our intuition, Although if we haven't learned to kind of let go of the mind, that will be harder to access, right? If we haven't been able to soften that external gaze, it'll be harder to connect with our internal gaze. But that is here in this kind of mental body. We have our truly our voice connects everything, right? Our throat is going to connect the mental and the emotional and the physical. It's where we have the outer expression, self-expression. And that comes more fluidly, more effectively, more efficiently through when we have a fully connected, fully fluid, harmonic energy body. But I just want to mention that that's where that is. So, and if we don't, then it'll often come out in so many different ways, right? Like a lot of words without really making any sense. The people that are just constantly talking, but they aren't actually, it's not like, it doesn't really feel like they're talking about anything. It can come out like that. It can come out with like not having much of a voice at all, not being able to like express what you're really thinking or feeling, right? So there's this, bottleneck. There's this place where we can really have energy that is like shallow in its movement, that's not connected to the truth of its movement. So doing this deeper work down, getting down into the physical root of our body will help more of that energy to flow from a truer place. That body wisdom that we're connecting with, part of it is accessing that so that it can come move out through our self-expression. So our self-expression, which comes out through our voice, through what we wear, how we move in this world, how we decorate our homes, right? Like all of our avenues of self-expression, we want them to feel authentic to us, right? And that will come as we access these layers. So we have the heart area where this is our emotional body, right? This is how we give and receive in the world, how we move like in relationship with people. And we can get really stuck here and not necessarily access our lower levels, our lower layers, get stuck in the energy dynamics with others, or often the emotional layer will feel more difficult to sit with, and so we jump back up to the mind. I talked about that in the first module. What we can begin to access as we get lower down is the way we take action in this world, right? Our power, that's our solar plexus, that energy in our belly. This is the frequency that we lean into to really give and receive our power in the world, to take action in a meaningful way. And it can only be meaningful, just like our voice, if we're connected down into that root layer. The layer below the belly, in our hips, this is where we sit in our creative center, where we begin to make sense of the sensation that we feel in the root. So it's truly where we begin to feel the emotions before they are tuned into, before we like really before they've made their way up into our mind to make sense of them, right? Or to begin to explain them or describe them. This is where we begin to feel the emotion that stems from the sensation in the root, which is just physical. That is what I feel my heart rate is speeding up, and I'm starting to feel a little jittery, and maybe my skin feels cold, and then that energy moves from the root into my if I'm connected down here, right? Like into my hips, into my sacral, that energy begins to move. What does that energy feel like to move through me? What kind of emotion or feeling does that begin to produce? And all of that is really held in the subconscious layers that have been generated from earlier in our lives. And that's why it is so important to do our subconscious healing work, because we can begin to tap into the origin points of how our mind makes sense. It's these subconscious layers that are really feeding the way the mind begins to tell a story or begins to shape a perception about something. So that's what we have the invitation when we let ourselves drop all the way down through the physical layers. We have this invitation to begin to feel at the root layer, and like what's the true experience of what I'm picking up on in this present moment, what's the true experience behind that? Like is, as an example, in this present moment, I'm feeling really activated. I'm feeling really hot. I'm feeling kind of flushed. I'm feeling angry. I might, again, if that's uncomfortable to sink into, to have resilience with staying power, eject up to my mind and begin to like why it's their fault, why this is always happening to me. Maybe I'm just an angry person. Maybe there's something wrong with me, like all these things, right? But if I can stay with it, if I can breathe all the way down, escape the mind and feel it, maybe I begin to connect it to something like an earlier memory. Maybe I begin to connect it to a reframe that's just lived in my mind from maybe something that was told to me for so many years of my life that I've ingrained it in my being, right? We get to move into the subconscious territory through the sensation outside of what our mind is doing, the mental movement, into the slower frequencies that tap us into a deeper way of knowing ourselves. And that's where we begin to have the portal through which we can begin to reshape the story. We can begin to recognize that, what was is no longer. That was then, this is now. And we can begin to create some discernment between the scared 5-year-old and who I am today, and hold ourselves with with compassion and with grace, and even all those that were at play, maybe in whatever scenario, we begin to identify and begin to work with that energy so that we can make it more true to our experience in this present moment. And that's the beauty of having that resilience, that staying power with what is the experience now? What is it taking me to? And is that true? Is it what's true in this moment? How do I want to work with that? There's a lot built into that. And I am not diminishing that, right? Through my holy chakra experience, where we move all the way from the root, the first chakra, through to the 12th chakra, this is something I recommend to be a year-long experience, and where we really sink into these energetic layers week by week to work with them. And so this isn't something that we necessarily do overnight, or that is going to be cultivated by simply tuning into our experience. But this has to happen before we can truly do the work that needs to be done in that way, right? And that's why this is something that is so important for me to presence before anything else in the work that I teach and the work that I do. Because first we have to be present. First, we have to be willing to build that resilience, to understand what it means to tap into the layers of sensation and where they may take us. So when we reconnect with sensation, we restore our intuition. We have the possibility of restoring our intuition, right? Because our intuition lives in those first signals that are beneath thought, beneath emotion. They really live in our instinctual knowing. That is where our intuition can come to us. And in that trust in our who we are, what we know beyond what we've learned externally. It really restores, reconnecting with sensation restores timing. So knowing when to move, when to pause, getting into that sacral rhythm of creative flow, which every creative cycle has a beginning, a middle, an end, and then a void point, a rest point, right? Just like through a year, we have the beginning, the seeds, planting, blooming, growing, and then dying, and then regenerating. And every single part of our lives has that cycle. So we have this timing that we are more aligned with when we are able to feel the truth of our sensation all the way through. We restore boundaries because from this place of body wisdom, when we get to the core of our sensation, we can really feel a yes, we can feel a no. And we aren't caught up in the mind trying to over explain or make pros and cons lists, right? We are able to just feel it. And we are able, through time, through practicing it, to trust that. We are, we restore our ability to have more choice in how we show up because we are coming from a place of a thoughtful response versus reaction. And and that we tapped into a little bit in module 1 as well, because that really has to do with, can I be in this present moment enough, in that pause, that space I'm able to fill up with, and then feel through the layers to really know what my true response is versus a quick reaction. And then we're also able to restore our vitality, our aliveness. And this is my favorite reason, because when we know, when we can feel that I exist here, we can feel the truth of our existence, which we can only completely feel when we can feel all the way down through the layers of sensation. Then not only do we have more access to that life force energy, to that Shakti, to the energy that is available to each and every one of us simply because we're alive, but we can feel the truth of that in a way that honors our aliveness so much that we shine brighter, that we can hold ourselves to our vitality, to our that we can show up for life, right? With a more meaning, in a more meaningful way, because it means more to us. That's what it means to live life with meaning. It has to mean the most it can to each of us. We have to see ourselves as this incredible, what an incredible opportunity it is to be alive, to be in this body. And that's when we carry it with such honor that we show up in that way to every moment, living with meaning. So sensation brings us back into that direct relationship with ourselves. The research around this really confirms that when we tune into the body, we improve our emotional regulation, we improve our intuition, we improve our decision-making skills. And that's because, once again, sensation is how the body tells the truth without needing to process it through the mind, without language, right? So when our sensation goes quiet, when we're cut off from that, we lose access to that subtle guidance. I always say that our body is like the best oracle guide we have, right? It is the best tuning forks we have. It sends the early warning signals. It tells us what is going to what like to be attracted to for pleasure, for desire, from a true place. We can, it helps us when we can feel that sensation, we can better emotionally regulate. We embody self-trust. And when we don't, we feel disconnected from ourselves, from our life. We might feel like numb or overwhelmed. We'll have like delayed reactions. We might live kind of in a state of confusion, like feel kind of like ungrounded. And the mind, like I've said, will take over, right? So it will be the only voice that is left. The more we're connected, or the more we're disconnected from our body, the more our mind drowns everything else out. So this is when we begin to hear things in ourselves like, I don't know what I feel. I don't know what I want. I don't trust myself, right? And it isn't that the wisdom is gone. It's that the contact is gone. So this sensation is this raw data, right? It's the information without any interpretation. There's no story there. We haven't assigned meaning yet. There isn't any action we have to take, right? I mean, that can happen really fast, right? Like, but in the sensation itself, it's before everything else. So energetically, sensation anchors our awareness all the way through the body. It stabilizes the nervous system because the nervous system is held in that container, and we're connected to the container, so we can better feel, better navigate, better manage our nervous system. We are our attention is grounded in the present moment, and we create conditions for emotions to move cleanly, for energy to fluidly move through our body. And this is why consciousness shifts energy. So when we guide awareness or breath to a specific place in the body, when we guide it to a specific sensation, when we guide it to a specific awareness, we are bringing consciousness to it. And so if I connect, like I talked about earlier, my present moment situation, I'm here in the present, this is my sensation, and I'm exploring that and beginning to get into those subconscious layers, beginning to get into what's there held in that response that maybe doesn't fully align with what's happening in my present moment in real life. Then I can, once I know that, once I see that, this is why hypnotherapy is so powerful too, because sometimes it helps us get into those layers that are more difficult to access, even in our present awareness. We bring consciousness to it. And once we know something, we can't unknow it. Once I know that this is the origin point, this is the truth of this, right? Then I no longer can easily get caught up in the story. And even if I do, I can more easily remind myself of what I became conscious of what I know to be true. It's very similar to, so the way that we work with that is if I've identified, this block that I have when things get overwhelming, I lose access to the fluid energy in my sacral body. I'm just giving an example here, right? Of something like things I've seen. And so that energy, that ability I have to be creative, to move fluidly with my emotions, it gets cut off. And so that might show up as like this urge to control a situation. But if I know that that's my urge, and I've become conscious of the fact that that's something that I tend to do when I'm blocked in my sacral chakra, then I can sit with that and bring my consciousness to that place and begin to sink into the layers that are there in that present moment. What's available for me to know about myself in this awareness that I know it's not about out there. This is about within me. And I'm going to feel what's in me. What is this in me? Why am I reacting to that? Why am I judging that? Why is this triggering me? Why is this activating me? And then I sink down into that layer and I'm present with myself long enough to feel what's there. And what happens when we do that, when I bring my consciousness down to the movement of energy in my hips, again, just working with this as an example, I bring my energy hones in there and my awareness sits there. And then I sit in that awareness and I notice what is available for me to know, what is available to come into my consciousness. When we very physically, if my shoulder is hurting and I focus my attention on my shoulder, we know that my attention on my shoulder, visualizing my breath, breathing and visualizing my breath, guiding my mind's eye to my shoulder, increases blood flow to that area. That is something we can tangibly measure. And so if blood flow increases to the area that I am focusing my attention in my mind, in my consciousness, in my present moment, then I'm also bringing energy to that area. I'm moving energy in that area and I'm breathing with what's there. And I'm noticing and I'm observing and I'm letting go of control and letting energy simply move. And so you can do this. This is energy work that you can do on your own. With a guide, you might be able to explore it a little bit deeper, maybe, maybe not. It's really helpful to get into these different areas with guides. I found that having someone that's sitting outside of myself can help, who knows how to hold space without invading space, to get in and get a little bit deeper. But simply breathing, feeling these layers of sensation, and inviting your consciousness to show you what's there. Once you begin to identify, the different layer that you're being called to, and building that resilience to stay and stay and stay and sink deeper and deeper and broader, that's energy work that you're doing for yourself. You are moving the energy in that space and opening you up to the next level of awareness, the next level of awareness. So this isn't about forcing yourself to feel more, right? It's about listening with more precision, with more respect, with more of an open mind, open heart. So it's simply name what is there. What is the sensation I'm experiencing? Pressure, warmness, tightness, numbness, movement, whatever it is. Feel the sensation only, and notice if you immediately want to jump to the mind, let it go, come back to the sensation. Stay with one sensation, rest your attention there, just long enough to notice a subtle shift in the sensation you're experiencing. That's all. And just invite the layers to reveal themselves. Sensation changes when met with presence. Notice what happens as you stay with it, as you just stay in the sensation. And then leave before you're overwhelmed. So some things will be big. Some things will be things that maybe you haven't, that maybe you've cut yourself off from since you were 2 years old, since you were 5 years old, right? And you cut yourself off from that for a reason. And so to protect yourself. And that's okay. But now you're beginning to explore it. You're beginning to connect with it again. But you can also flood yourself. You can also reactivate yourself from that, right? So if you're working with this is where a guide for anything that you might move into that's a little bit bigger, that's a little bit harder. That's really good to have a guide to help you know how much to go before getting overwhelmed. It's like, I always say, like, if you're holding a yoga pose, I'm going to bring this back to the physical. If you're holding a yoga pose, and we talked about, like, can I take one breath to greet my edge, not to shove past my edge by taking 20 more breaths and ignoring the request of my body to stop, but take one more breath to build that resilience, and then let go and honor that you greeted your edge. You didn't see it ahead and turn away and run. You greeted it. You said, hello, edge. Hello, comfort zone. I'm going to acknowledge this is where it is. And I'm going to give myself the space to then back away. It doesn't all have to happen overnight. It doesn't have to happen the moment you see it. That's how safety grows. That's how you begin to build trust with your nervous system, with your body, right? So this is where we begin to really touch into those deeper things that might be present. We locate them in the body, and just acknowledge what's possible in this moment because it's not about fixing anything. It's not about figuring it out. It's just noticing and becoming so aware that we can really honor what we notice. We can honor where we're at with it and not need to do it all in one moment. So when we practice sinking into sensation in this way, it leads us to be our own trusted guide, to be a stabilizing force, to bridge emotion into the fullness of our being, right? And we're going to get into that even deeper in module 3. It's really the foundation for feeling our true desires, to feel our true pleasure, and that will sink into more in module 4. It's it helps us to ground ourselves into our real expression and our true connection to be able to show up in this world and have our energy be meaningful beyond our own individual life. That's module 5. So you begin to live from inside your body instead of managing it from outside or from above it, right? So sensation becomes the place where truth first arrives, and we begin to really know that to be true. All right, that is module 2. I'm really excited to move into module 3 with you. But first, move through the rest of the processes that you're invited into with module 2, and then I'll see you after that.